Okay, Peter in Virginia, how are you?
I'm good. How are you all doing?
Pretty
All
good?
right.
Excellent. I just had to turn my speakerphone off. This call is I'm sort of piggybacking on the shoulders of the caller earlier who was talking about near-death experiences. Now, as an atheist myself, I don't think near-death experiences are indicative of any sort of anything supernatural or any sort of God or heaven. As most scientists have figured out, they're, malfunctionings in the brain. But I did think it was interesting that one thing you talked about was sort of how vivid some of these experiences can be. Vivid in such a manner that they are almost indistinguishable from reality. And there's also this element of, it's almost as though when people have these experiences, their sense of time is warped in such a sense that it can make the experiences last much longer than they actually last. So one question that I thought I would ask is, do you all, as atheists, I mean, obviously I take it you don't think there's a real hell or heaven, but do you ever find yourself afraid of a hellish experience? Because even though it's just it's just a product of the imagination, if it seems that vivid and real, that would be enough to be, scared of it. I mean, I'm just wondering.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't personally spend any time worrying about that, but I know that there are certain types of mental illness that I think can probably feel like a hellish experience for people that are in the middle of them.
Yeah.
So I know that that sort of thing exists for people in reality, and that that is something that some people fear, and with good reason.
I also don't deal with hellish experiences much. Having been raised atheist as a kid, I never had to take those ideas very seriously, and some of them sort of bubbled up in popular culture, but they just didn't seem real. There was a period when I was in college where I sort of intellectually wondered, shouldn't I think about what happens if I'm wrong? And, I spent more time contemplating it, and maybe I can't remember being all that worried about it ever. And nowadays, when somebody threatens me with hell, I don't bat an eye, because it's not something that ever was one of my deep-seated fears at all. But I have talked to a lot of ex-Christians who were raised with the concept of hell and can't escape the fear and the nightmares that maybe they are going to experience an eternity of torment. It's a lot of shit to put in your brain to deal with.
And it's good that you brought that up, because we get email from people from time to time who are just in the process of leaving religion and theism behind, and they still struggle with a fear of hell. So that's something, I think it's like you get that little bit of indoctrination planted in your brain early on, and it's really hard to lose that.
Yeah, it's. I will admit I probably do fall into that category, because I was. Well, okay, so I was sort of a very pious Christian up until a certain age, probably 15 or so, and then there was a point where I just sort of. I identified as a Christian, but it was really. I had bad reasons for doing so, and one of those bad reasons was sort of the Pascal's wager. Yeah. And so I would always try to convince myself that I believed in a God, and that, I believe in a God for good reasons. I believe in this God because he's good and loving. And then I realized, I think it was it was in 2015, I listened to Richard Dawkins' book to hop on another call, The God Delusion, and slowly but surely, it started to, my faith, even if you can call it that, started to just erode away until finally I just said, this stuff has just made me a prisoner my entire life. I have to identify as atheist, because I don't know if there's a God, and even if there is one, as Matt Dillahunty always likes to say, I mean, the God of the Bible, even if the God of the Bible is real, or I would just say even the God of the Quran, he's a prick. I mean, he's a sadistic prick. This sort of this worship, and I mean, screw that sort of thing. So, and the hell was the thing that I think the whole Pascal's wager thing was what was keeping me there. So
yeah, well, yeah, and it sounds like I mean that whole Pascal's wager thing. It's almost like people get to that point, and I almost want to tell them, hey, it's good news. You're like just around the corner to losing all of this fear and everything. But on the other hand, it's pretty terrifying to kind of be in the grip of that, But yeah, that is like the last thin veneer of what people consider to be faith, and it's really not faith. It's just the fear and indoctrination and clinging on with the last little hook it has in somebody.
Right, because if you're at the point of Pascal's wager, like you're beyond the point of justifying why there probably is a God. You're just saying, even if there probably isn't, I'd better act like I think there is one. I think even Pascal himself would have said, that, this is sort of a last-ditch argument.
Yeah.
He was a pretty smart guy, mathematician and stuff.
Yeah.
He was mistaken about this thing.
Yes.
I think.
Well, and it's important to note that he was also arguing for a specific flavor of Christianity, Catholicism in particular. So it wasn't just that you had to believe in the Christian God; it's that you had to be Catholic too.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. Because I took philosophy in college, so reading sort of the philosophies of the sort of medieval philosophers, it would always kind of amuse me that they always tried to be so open, but in the end, it was always just leading the evidence back to Catholicism.
Yeah.
My favorite old-timey philosopher was, what's that guy's name? He wrote Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. His name will come to me in a second. But
was it
Jonathan Edwards.
More?
Oh.
I mean, and I say favorite in a very sarcastic way, but I mean, he just lays on this disgust and hatred of humanity as his explanation for why you'd better get right with God. And as a lifelong atheist, I found him hilarious.
Interesting. Yeah, I ought to read that just to.
Yeah,
time just to sort of get
don't necessarily read Jonathan Edwards directly. I think the first time I came across the idea of Jonathan Edwards, or some of the things that Jonathan Edwards was saying, was when I read a guy who I did like as a philosopher. He was a mathematician named Raymond Smullyan, and he wrote an essay called "Is God a Taoist?", which maybe isn't seriously arguing for Taoism, but makes a pretty compelling and entertaining case for what an atheist might accept as godlike. I'm not sure what Raymond Smullyan is. He's kind of a Taoist, kind of an atheist.
Yeah.
But it's a funny essay. It's like a dialogue between man and this vaguely defined God that's nothing like the Christian God.
I'll have to check that out as well.
Yeah.
One quick question before I know you all probably got a lot of callers, so just ask one more quick question if it's okay. Do you all think, I just thought of this during the midst of the call, do you all think there are instances where the notion of Pascal's wager could be applied to sort of secular concepts? Like, I mean, I almost, if somebody wanted to say, let's say you're talking about something related to terrorism or something, and I don't know what the circumstances would be in which you'd have Pascal's wager, but it'd be like, what if you're wrong? There'll be a terrorist attack.
You know who made that exact argument? Dick Cheney.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, literally, there was a book I read called The 1% Doctrine, which was a quote from Dick Cheney, who said, even if there was a 1% chance of catastrophic destruction of our way of life, we'd have to treat it as 100% certainty. And of course, we all know where that philosophy wound up.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I thank you all for taking my call, and it was good to get your perspective on that issue.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks for calling.
All right. Thank you.